In this first lesson, we're going to be answering the question, how do I describe something? Now that might seem like a very simple question. You've been describing things your entire life. The sky is blue, circles are round. But in statistics, we need to learn how to describe something in a systematic and logical way. So, suppose someone gave us the task of describing people. We might describe them by their physical attributes. Now this could include such things as their age, but could also include their height, which we could measure either in centimeters or in meters. It could also include their hair color, which could be black, blonde, could even be blue. And this could also include their hair length, long, medium, short, they could be bald. We might also describe a person by their personality and what they do, and this could be something as simple as their name, but it could also include things like their job or their profession, and it might include something slightly more fun, like their favorite TV show. But there's a bit of a problem here. I don't know all this information about everybody. I don't know everyone's age. I certainly don't know everybody's favorite TV show. So how do I find out? By asking questions. So when we have an attribute we want to describe, like age, we need to ask a question for each attribute. How many years old are you? How tall are you in centimeters? What color is your hair? How long is your hair? What is your name? What is your profession? And what is your favorite TV show? Now, since people are very complex, we could keep asking questions for a long time, but each of these questions would be an attempt to find out about a particular attribute of that person. So, back to our imaginary task of describing people. Suppose we're now in a street trying to describe the people that we see. We know how. We're armed with our trusty questionnaire, and all we need to do is to walk right up to people and get them to answer it. Even if we don't have any technical knowledge, we should already feel like statisticians. We're collecting data, whatever that is, and describing people with the help of questions. So, here are our people. And we're going to ask them all questions, like what is your age, what is your profession, and we actually got very lucky because they were all in the mood to chat and answered all of our questions. And since we're very good statisticians, we've tabulated all the answers to the questions so that next to each person's name, which is the answer to the first question, funnily enough, what is your name, we can see all their answers to each of the other questions. And so we can see that each question sort of has a column. So what is your profession has this column. What is your age has its own column. So each question has a column. And each person has their own row. So we know that this person's name is James, but because artist is next to James in the same row, we know that James is an artist who likes Big Brother, who's 49, 175 centimeters tall, who's got grey hair but is clearly balding, as we can see from the picture. So now, we've completed our first task as statisticians, describing things. We've described things, in this case people, by asking questions and collecting data, whatever that is. But people are only one of a countless number of things we might want to describe. And if we want to be able to describe anything, we're going to need to understand all the tools and terms that we just use to describe people. And we're going to need to learn their real names. Okay. So, the most important tool that we used just then was questions. So we asked people questions and they gave us answers. So what is the statistics name for questions? Well, statisticians call questions variables. Okay, so for every question, people gave us an answer. And so we call answers values. And so just like for every question, there is an answer, For every variable, there is a value. And when we're starting off, it can be really, really useful to always translate variables back to questions and vice versa, and always translate values back to answers and vice versa. So when you're reading this table, even though it just says name, it just says job, and it just says fave TV, I want you to translate these questions, these variable names, back into their questions. And so when you read job, I want you to read, what is your job? And when you read plumber, it's always good when you're looking at this value, plumber, to go back and say, okay, what is the answer? This is the answer, I am a plumber, to the question, what is your job? So, we have questions and answers, or variables and values, but what are they about? Lots of different things can be described with a height or an age, so maybe those variables are referring to cats or dogs instead of people. And so, the thing that our variables are describing, so the thing that we're asking questions to, we refer to that in statistics as our unit of observation. Now in this case, it's really obvious. It's a person. So we have the thing that we're asking questions to. In this case, it was a person. And we've got a special statistics name for that, which is the unit of observation. And so this is a very self-explanatory name. This is the thing that we're observing. It's some person. Okay. Now, this may seem very obvious in this case, but when we're doing more complex descriptions of things, specifying what the unit of observation is absolutely essential. So, if the unit of observation is a person, in this particular case, then we have a special name for a particular person, or a particular thing, and that is simply an observation. So let's go back to our table. Remember how we said that there were questions in the columns and people in the rows? Well, when we're using our statistical terminology, what we say is that we've got variables in our columns. Remember, variables correspond to questions. And in our rows, we have observations. In this case, our observations are particular people, but in general, they could be anything that we like. So, questions are variables, answers to those questions are values for the variables. The particular things that we're looking at are our unit of observation. A specific thing that we're looking at is an observation. And finally, we have to answer the question, what is data? What is data? So data is all of this. So it's all the values for all the variables for each of our observations. Now it's important that we have these three things, the values for the variables and our observations. If we just have values like 49, 28, 26, 40, we don't know what they're referring to. They could be referring to the heights of small children, or they could be referring to simply the number of days in a year with rainfall. We need the variable or the question to give the value or the answer meaning. So if we've got values, we need variables to give them meaning. So what if we just have variables and values? Well, then we can't really tie any two values together. So someone's 28 years old and someone like Grand Designs, but we don't know if they're the same person. And having observations allows us to tie together different answers to different questions, and allows us to say, okay, all the answers in this row are answers that James gave. So James is an observation who is an artist, likes Big Brother, is 49, is 175 centimeters tall, has grey hair and is balding. But without knowing the observations and the variables and the values, all this information we've got here isn't useful. But when we do have all that information together, then we have data. So now you know all the basic terms we'll be using to talk about data, as well as what the term data means. So let's recap. when we want to describe something, we look at the attributes of it we want to describe. And for each attribute, we ask a question, or we have a variable. And for each variable, we have a lot of answers. And these are our values. The thing we're looking at is our unit of observation, and each thing is an observation. So for each observation, each variable takes a particular value. Or, in the language we used earlier, for each person, there is a specific answer to each question.